I'm Flora, 28 years old, and I'm standing in my wedding dress watching my estranged family walk through those reception hall doors after 5 years of silence. The last time I saw them, my mother looked directly at me and asked my aunt, "Who is this girl?" As if I were a stranger in my own home. Now here they are, uninvited, carrying expensive gifts and wearing fake smiles like masks. My sister Diane approaches with that same sneer that destroyed my childhood, and I realize some moments define your entire life. This is mine. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from today. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, hit that like button and subscribe because this story might just change how you see everything. Trust me, what happens when forgotten children finally find their voice will leave you speechless. Growing up in the Morrison household meant watching life happen around me while I remained a ghost in my own home. My sister Diane, 3 years older and infinitely more visible, consumed every ounce of our parents' attention like she was the sun, and I was just a distant, forgotten planet. The pattern started early and never stopped. My 8th birthday became Diane's friend's pool party because Mom simply forgot what day it was. I sat in my room with a cupcake I bought myself while listening to the laughter echoing from our backyard, where my parents hosted 30 kids for a girl whose birthday was actually 3 weeks away. When I finally worked up the courage to ask Mom why she forgot, she waved her hand dismissively and said Diane's social life was important for the family image. High school graduation should have been different, but it wasn't. I stood on that stage, valedictorian of my class, scanning the crowd for my family's faces. They were at Diane's boyfriend's pool party because, according to the text I got later, they thought my ceremony was the next day. The principal had to drive me home because they forgot to arrange transportation. I found them in our backyard, champagne glasses raised, toasting Diane's boyfriend's acceptance to community college while my MIT acceptance letter sat unopened on the kitchen counter for 3 months. The letter about MIT is its own painful memory. I had strategically placed it where they couldn't miss it, right next to Dad's coffee maker. Every morning, he moved it aside to brew his coffee. Every evening, Mom stacked bills on top of it. When I finally opened it myself and told them I got into MIT, Mom's response was to ask if that was a real school, and Dad just grunted that he hoped I could afford it myself. Meanwhile, they threw Diane a party when she got into the local beauty school she dropped out of after 2 weeks. But nothing prepared me for the appendicitis incident. I woke up at 3 in the morning with excruciating pain, managed to call myself an ambulance, and underwent emergency surgery alone. The hospital called my parents multiple times. They didn't show up for 4 days. When they finally arrived, Mom's first words weren't about my health, but about how the hospital bills would affect their vacation plans. Dad added that they forgot I was even sick because Diane had been stressed about her new job at the mall. Diane herself just stood there, scrolling through her phone, and asked if I was being dramatic for attention again. The nurse who had been caring for me couldn't hide her shock. She had assumed I was an orphan based on how alone I had been. When she realized these well-dressed people were my actual family, she excused herself, but I saw the tears in her eyes. That's when it hit me that this wasn't normal. Other families didn't forget their children existed. Grace Morrison, my mother, had perfected the art of selective memory. She could recite every detail of Diane's life from her first word to her latest boyfriend drama, but she couldn't remember my middle name. She introduced me at family gatherings as Diane's sister, and once spent an entire Christmas dinner talking about her 2 pregnancies when she had 3 children, forgetting my brother who died in infancy entirely and me by extension. My father Robert was no better, just quieter about his indifference. He taught Diane to drive, went to every one of her school events, and kept her photos in his wallet. I taught myself to drive using YouTube videos and borrowed a friend's car for the test. When I showed him my license, he asked why I was showing him someone else's ID. He genuinely didn't recognize me in the photo. The extended family followed their lead. At family reunions, aunts and uncles would ask my parents how their daughter was doing, singular, as if I didn't exist. Cousins stopped inviting me to things because my parents would confirm I was busy when they had no idea what my schedule was. I became the family ghost, present but never seen, speaking but never heard. School became my refuge, but even there, the neglect followed me. Parent-teacher conferences went unattended. School plays happened without them in the audience. I won the state science fair, and the local newspaper wanted a family photo. My parents sent Diane in their place, claiming they had a prior engagement. The photo ran with the caption, "Flora Morrison celebrates with her sister." No mention of parents who couldn't be bothered to show up. The worst part was how they made me doubt my own reality. When I tried to talk about feeling forgotten, they called me dramatic. When I showed them evidence of missed events, they accused me of keeping score and being petty. Diane would chime in with her favorite phrase that I was just jealous of her natural ability to command attention. They gaslit me so effectively that I spent years in therapy wondering if I was the problem. Christmas of my junior year at MIT was supposed to be a homecoming, but it became my final goodbye. I had saved money from my 3 part-time jobs to buy thoughtful gifts for each family member, hoping maybe this time would be different. The house looked beautiful from the outside, twinkling lights and wreaths on every window. I stood at the front door for 10 minutes, gathering courage before using my key. The first sign something was wrong hit me immediately. The family photos lining the hallway had been rearranged, and I wasn't in any of them. At first, I thought maybe they were redecorating, but then I saw the Christmas card proofs on the hall table. It was a beautiful family portrait with one glaring edit. My face had been poorly photoshopped out, leaving a blurry space between my parents. The selected card read, "The Morrison family," with just the 3 of them. My childhood bedroom was the next shock. I climbed the stairs with my suitcase, exhausted from finals and the long drive home, only to find my door had been removed entirely. Inside, my room had been converted into Diane's walk-in closet. My bed, desk, and bookshelf were gone. In their place stood racks of designer clothes, shoes, and accessories. My academic awards that once lined the walls had been thrown in a box in the corner, some of them broken. I stood there shaking when Diane appeared behind me. She actually looked surprised to see me, as if she had genuinely forgotten I existed. Then came that familiar sneer, as she said I should have called before showing up unannounced. When I reminded her this was my home too, she laughed and said Mom gave her the room months ago since I was never around anyway. She pushed past me to grab a purse, mentioning they were all heading to her boyfriend's family dinner soon. The confrontation with my parents happened in the living room. They were dressed up, ready to leave, when I finally found my voice and asked why I had been erased from the family photos. Mom looked at me with that practiced confusion she had perfected over the years and said they only had photos of immediate family. When I pointed out that I was their daughter, she actually laughed. Dad's response was worse. He shrugged and said, "Who cares about photos? You're being dramatic as usual." I pulled out my phone and showed them evidence. Every missed birthday, every forgotten milestone, every time they claimed to not know where I was when I had told them repeatedly. Mom's response was to call me obsessive for keeping track. Dad said I was making a big deal out of nothing. Diane, draped in jewelry I recognized as my grandmother's that was supposedly lost, sneered and delivered the killing blow. Maybe if I were more memorable, people wouldn't forget me so easily. That's when Aunt Martha arrived to pick up a dish Mom had borrowed. She saw my face and immediately knew something was wrong. In the kitchen, away from my family, she revealed the truth that shattered my remaining illusions. My parents had been telling the extended family for months that I had dropped out of school, that I was struggling with mental health issues, that I refused to come home because I was embarrassed about my failures. Meanwhile, I was on the dean's list, had secured a prestigious internship, and only came home when I could afford the gas money they refused to help with. The revelation about my college fund came next. Aunt Martha mentioned how generous it was of my parents to invest in Diane's boutique business. When I asked what she meant, she explained that my parents had told everyone they liquidated my college fund to support Diane's entrepreneurial dreams. The boutique that failed within 6 months. The college fund they told me never existed when I asked for help with textbooks. I confronted them immediately, but they had already crafted their narrative. Mom claimed the money was family money, and they decided as a family where it should go. When I pointed out I wasn't consulted, Dad said I was away at school playing genius while Diane needed real help. Diane added that at least she was trying to contribute to the family instead of hiding behind books like a coward. The final straw came when cousin Jeremy arrived. He congratulated my parents on Diane's upcoming wedding, then turned to me and asked if it was true I had been hospitalized for a mental breakdown. When I asked what he was talking about, he showed me the family group chat I had never been added to. There it was, message after message about poor Flora, who couldn't handle college pressure, who made up stories about being forgotten, who was now getting professional help for her delusions. I scrolled through months of lies. Every achievement I had earned was twisted into a failure. My academic success became social inability. My jobs became proof I couldn't focus on studies. My absence from family events I wasn't invited to became evidence of my unstable mental state. And through it all, Diane was painted as the devoted daughter who tried so hard to include her difficult sister. That night, I sat in my car in a parking lot, calling every hotel within an hour's drive. They were all booked for the holidays. I ended up sleeping in my car, using my winter coat as a blanket, while my family attended a Christmas party where they told everyone I was spending the holidays in a psychiatric facility. The temperature dropped below freezing, and I used my textbooks to insulate the windows, symbolic of how my education had become my only warmth in a cold world. The next morning, I drove back to the house while they were still asleep. I packed everything I could fit in my car, mostly documents and a few photos they hadn't thrown away. I found my birth certificate in a file marked tax documents and my social security card in a drawer with expired coupons. These people had reduced my existence to paperwork they might need someday. I left a note on the kitchen table next to the coffee maker Dad would use in a few hours. It was simple and direct. Since you've already forgotten me, I'm making it official. I'm done trying to exist in spaces where I'm invisible. I won't be your ghost anymore. Don't look for me. You won't remember to anyway. The drive back to Boston was the longest and shortest of my life. Every mile took me further from the family that never wanted me and closer to a future I would build myself. I stopped at a rest area and had a panic attack that lasted an hour. A trucker knocked on my window to check if I was okay, showing more concern for my well-being in 5 minutes than my family had in 21 years. That stranger's kindness gave me the strength to keep driving toward my new life. Seattle called to me like a siren song, 3,000 miles from everyone who had forgotten I existed. I arrived with 2 suitcases, my laptop, and $800 to my name. The studio apartment I found was smaller than Diane's converted closet, but it was mine. The Murphy bed creaked, the radiator clanged like a ghost in chains, and the window faced a brick wall, but I had never felt more at home. This was my space where no one could erase me. The first months tested every ounce of strength I had built. I worked at a 24-hour diner from 11 at night to 7 in the morning, then rushed to my second job at a bookstore from 8 to 4. In between, I continued my MIT courses online, studying in the bookstore's backroom during breaks and at the diner during slow nights. My managers at both jobs became surrogate parents, checking on me, making sure I ate, celebrating my small victories like they mattered. Rosa, the night manager at the diner, became my first real friend in Seattle. She was a 60-year-old former teacher who treated every lost soul who wandered into her diner like family. When she learned I was sleeping 4 hours a night to manage everything, she set up a cot in the break room and adjusted my schedule so I could rest between rushes. She never asked about my family, somehow sensing that was a wound too fresh to probe. Marcus, who owned the bookstore, discovered I was living on ramen and day-old pastries. He started a new store policy where employees could take home any food from the cafe that didn't sell, which mysteriously increased whenever I worked. He also noticed me reading programming books during lulls and mentioned his nephew Jake worked in tech. Maybe I'd like to meet him sometime, no pressure, just networking. I met Jake on a particularly brutal Tuesday. I had just finished a statistics exam online, scored a 97, and had no one to tell. I was celebrating alone with a free coffee when this guy in a Doctor Who t-shirt asked if the seat across from me was taken. His laptop had stickers from every programming language I was learning, and his smile didn't feel like it wanted anything from me except conversation. Jake worked as a senior developer at a startup downtown. He came to the bookstore every Tuesday and Thursday, ordering the same large Americano and settling into code for hours. We started talking about programming, then books, then life. He never pushed for information about my past, content to exist in the present with me. When I finally told him about my family, 3 months into our friendship, he simply said that their loss was Seattle's gain. His family, the Andersons, were everything mine wasn't. His mother Janet hugged me the first time we met, a real hug that lasted long enough to make me cry. His father Tom immediately started calling me kiddo and asking about my studies. His younger sister Emily declared me her new older sister within 5 minutes of meeting me, filling a role I never knew I needed. They invited me to Sunday dinners, remembered my birthday, and celebrated my achievements like they were their own. The breakthrough in my career came when I applied for an internship at Morrison Tech, a cruel cosmic joke of a company name that almost made me skip the application. But Jake encouraged me to reclaim the name, make it mean something different. I aced the technical interview, impressed them with my portfolio built during those late nights at the diner, and landed the position. The hiring manager later told me I was their top candidate out of 200 applicants. My chosen family grew organically. Malin from my online study group became my roommate when I could finally afford a 2-bedroom apartment. She was escaping her own family trauma, and we built our healing around shared meals and study sessions. Sophia, my mentor at Morrison Tech, became the older sister I should have had, teaching me not just coding but how to advocate for myself in male-dominated spaces. We formed a support system that caught each other when the world tried to drop us. Therapy with Dr. Sarah Chin saved my life in ways I'm still discovering. She specialized in family trauma and helped me understand that being forgotten wasn't my fault. We worked through the gaslighting, the way I had internalized their neglect as my own failing. She taught me that making myself smaller wouldn't make them see me better. Visibility wasn't earned through suffering. It was a basic human right my family had denied me. Jake and I fell in love slowly, then all at once. He waited patiently while I learned to trust that presence could be permanent. Our first kiss happened after I successfully defended my online thesis, when I realized he had stayed up all night just to be on the video call for support. He celebrated my victories like they were his own and held me through nightmares where I was invisible even to myself. He proposed on the same hiking trail where I had first told him the whole truth about my family, transforming a place of vulnerability into one of promise. The job offer from Atlas Technologies came with a 6-figure salary, validation of every sacrifice I had made. I accepted it sitting in the same car I had once slept in, now parked outside the waterfront apartment Jake and I shared. My bank account held more money than my parents had ever spent on my education. I donated the amount of my stolen college fund to a scholarship for forgotten children, naming it after Aunt Martha, who had told me the truth. My life in Seattle became everything I had dreamed. Morning runs along the Sound, evening coding sessions with Jake, weekend adventures with our friend group. I learned to rock climb, facing physical heights after conquering emotional depths. I volunteered with teens aging out of foster care, understanding the unique pain of being unseen by those meant to love you. My garden on our tiny balcony grew herbs and vegetables, proof that I could nurture life even when mine hadn't been nurtured. But even in happiness, the past haunted me. I changed my last name legally to Chin, honoring my therapist who had given me back my identity. Social media remained a minefield of potential discovery. Every unknown number made my heart race. I built walls around my joy, protecting it from the family who had proven they could destroy without touching. Jake understood. The Andersons understood. My chosen family understood. None of them pushed me to reconcile or forgive. They simply loved me in the present, which was more than I had ever dare hope for. 2 years of blissful silence ended when Diane discovered my LinkedIn profile. I had debated creating one, knowing the risks, but professional networking was essential in tech. My mistake was listing Morrison Tech as my internship, creating a breadcrumb trail for anyone searching that cursed name. The first message came on a Tuesday afternoon while I was leading a team meeting. Flora, is this really you? We've been so worried. As if worry was something they had ever spent on me. The floodgates opened within hours. 27 messages from Diane, each more manipulative than the last. She praised my success, claimed she always knew I would make something of myself, and casually mentioned how much Mom and Dad missed me. The messages escalated quickly from fake concern to requests for professional connections, then to hints about her latest business venture needing angel investors. She had learned I had money and suddenly remembered I existed. Mom's voicemail came next, a masterpiece of revisionist history. In her version, I had run away for no reason, breaking their hearts. She claimed they had searched everywhere for me, hired professionals, never stopped hoping I would come home. The same woman who forgot I was in the hospital for 4 days now claimed she hadn't slept since I left. She ended with how Diane was struggling financially and family should help family, revealing the true motive behind their sudden concern. Dad's email was shorter, but more insidious. He wrote like a businessman proposing a deal, mentioning my obligation to the family that raised me. He calculated what they had spent on my upbringing, ignoring that most of it went to Diane, and suggested I could start paying it back by investing in Diane's new boutique. He signed it "Your Father," as if the title itself demanded compliance. The attachment was a business proposal so poorly written it insulted my intelligence more than their neglect ever had. The escalation to hiring a private investigator showed their desperation. Jake noticed the same car parked outside our building 3 days in a row. The driver kept detailed notes of our comings and goings. When confronted by building security, he admitted the Morrisons had hired him to find their missing daughter. They painted a picture of a mentally ill runaway who needed their help. The investigator seemed genuinely surprised when security showed him my restraining order application, realizing he had been lied to about the situation. Their decision to appear at Morrison Tech crossed every boundary. Security called me when my parents and Diane showed up claiming a family emergency. I watched through the lobby cameras as they performed grief for an audience of my coworkers. Mom actually had tears, probably the first she had ever shed for me. Diane clutched an old photo of us as children, the only evidence she could find that we were related. Dad paced with the energy of a man who hated not getting his way. Jake left his office across town immediately when I called him panicking. He arrived as my parents were telling the security guard about their poor daughter, who had cut them off for no reason. His intervention was beautiful in its simplicity. He introduced himself as my fiancé, showed them the restraining order paperwork on his phone, and suggested they leave before the police arrived. The security footage showed Dad's face turning purple with rage while Mom wailed about not knowing I was engaged. The smear campaign began that night. Every relative I had ever met received a carefully crafted message about my mental instability, my cruelty to my loving family, my delusions of persecution. They included screenshots of my LinkedIn showing my success, spinning it as proof I had abandoned family for money. Aunt Martha called to warn me, disgusted by their behavior but worried about the family response. She had defended me, only to be cut off herself for enabling my illness. Social media became their weapon of choice. Diane created Instagram posts about missing her sister, using childhood photos where I looked happy because she couldn't find recent ones. The comments filled with sympathy from people who didn't know the truth. Mom joined grief support groups online, sharing fictional stories about her estranged daughter. They created a narrative where I was the villain in their tragedy, garnering sympathy and attention they had never given me. The pregnancy announcement was Diane's nuclear option. She posted ultrasounds with captions about how sad she was that her child would never know their aunt. She tagged me in posts about forgiveness, family bonds, and letting go of grudges. Friends I hadn't spoken to in years reached out, asking why I would abandon my pregnant sister. The manipulation was so effective I almost doubted myself again, wondering if I was being cruel by maintaining boundaries with someone carrying an innocent child. Jake's family faced their own harassment. The Morrisons found their contact information and sent letters portraying me as a gold digger who had trapped their son. Janet called me crying, not from belief, but from fury that these people would try to poison her family. Tom drove to their house in Portland, returning with a cease and desist letter from his lawyer brother. Emily posted a scathing social media response defending me that went viral in our circle, calling out toxic families who only remember children when they succeed. The financial harassment escalated when they discovered my donation to the scholarship fund. They demanded access to family money I was wasting on strangers. Dad threatened legal action for stealing my college fund, ignoring that he had admitted in writing to giving it to Diane. They tried to contact the scholarship board, claiming I had stolen money to fund it. The board's investigation cleared me, but added another layer of stress to my life. Every good deed became ammunition for their war against my independence. My therapist helped me navigate each new attack without losing myself. We role-played responses, practiced grounding techniques for panic attacks, and reinforced that their escalation proved my decision right. She pointed out that their efforts to find me showed more energy than they had ever invested when I lived with them. Their sudden interest was about control and money, not love or reconciliation. Understanding their motivations helped me stay strong when emotions threatened to overwhelm logic. Planning a wedding while hiding from your family felt like organizing a celebration in witness protection. Jake proposed on our favorite hiking trail overlooking Puget Sound, the same place where I had first told him everything. His proposal included promises not just to love me, but to protect our life together from anyone who would harm it. The ring belonged to his grandmother, a woman who had fled her own toxic family decades ago. It felt like wearing a talisman of survival. The first security measure was information control. We created code names for vendors, referring to our wedding as Project Sunrise in all communications. The venue contract included strict privacy clauses with financial penalties for information leaks. Our wedding planner, recommended by Jake's cousin who worked in celebrity events, specialized in high-security celebrations. She had protected politicians' children and abuse survivors, understanding that sometimes love needed bodyguards. Password protection became our new normal. Every vendor required a verbal code to discuss our event. The florist thought we were paranoid until I showed her the printed threats from Diane about ruining any wedding I dared have without family. The caterer appreciated the drama, admitting she had always wanted to work a wedding with intrigue. The photographer, whose own family had disowned him, offered to bring backup security cameras as wedding gifts. We leaked false information strategically through extended family networks. Aunt Martha, now firmly on our side, casually mentioned I was eloping to Hawaii. Cousin Jeremy heard we were having a courthouse ceremony. Different relatives received different dates, all wrong, creating a maze of misinformation. The real date, venue, and details stayed locked in a safe Jake bought specifically for wedding planning. Paranoid became our love language. The near misses tested our systems. Diane showed up at 3 different bridal shops on the same day, claiming to be shopping for her pregnant self while asking about recent appointments for someone matching my description. One shop assistant called to warn me, recognizing manipulation from her own estranged sister. We switched to a private seamstress who worked from home, fitting my dress in her living room while her husband watched the door. My parents' attempt to infiltrate Jake's family proved their desperation. They contacted his extended relatives on Facebook, sharing their sob story about their mentally ill daughter who had isolated their son. Jake's aunt in Minnesota almost believed them until she noticed inconsistencies in their timeline. They claimed I had been hospitalized recently, but she had just seen our engagement photos from that same time period. The family group chat exploded with warnings about the Morrisons and their lies. The wedding party consisted entirely of chosen family. Malin and Sophia stood as my bridesmaids, along with Emily, who had claimed me as her sister from day one. Jake's groomsmen included his brother and 2 friends who had become like brothers to me. Every person in our wedding party had a security briefing, photos of my family members, and strict instructions about information control. They treated it like a game, creating elaborate cover stories for anyone who asked about wedding details. Creating the guest list meant accepting certain losses. Extended relatives who might leak information couldn't be invited. Work colleagues who remained Facebook friends with professional connections stayed off the list. We kept it small, intimate, filled only with people who had proven their loyalty. Each invitation went out with personalized security codes and strict instructions about social media blackouts until after the event. The venue, a restored barn on Whidbey Island, offered natural security with its ferry access and private roads. We booked the entire property for the weekend, including accommodation for all guests. Security cameras covered every entrance. We hired 2 off-duty police officers who specialized in event security, showing them photos of my family and explaining the situation. They positioned themselves strategically, ready to intercept any unwelcome arrivals. My dress fitting became a celebration of chosen family. Janet and Emily joined me, bringing champagne and tissues. The seamstress, Maria, shared her own story of escaping an abusive family while adjusting the hem. Every woman in that room understood that wedding dress could mean freedom as much as love. When I looked in the mirror, I saw not just a bride but a survivor, wrapped in silk and strength. Jake handled his own preparations with military precision. He created contingency plans for every scenario, from peaceful removal to police intervention. His groomsmen received specific assignments. His brother watched the parking area, his best friend monitored the guest entrance, his cousin covered the service entrance. They communicated through earpieces like Secret Service agents, turning potential trauma into an adventure they were honored to help prevent. The rehearsal dinner happened at the Andersons' home, surrounded by people who had chosen to love me. Tom gave a speech about finding unexpected treasures, never mentioning my family, but acknowledging that Jake had found me against all odds. Janet presented me with a family heirloom bracelet, officially welcoming me as the daughter of her heart. Emily performed a song she wrote about sisters bound by choice rather than blood, leaving no dry eyes. Final preparations included letters I would never send. My therapist suggested writing to my family without the intention of delivery, expressing everything I needed to say. I wrote about the little girl who waited for them to see her, the teenager who achieved alone, the woman who survived their neglect. I burned the letters the night before my wedding, watching smoke carry away words they would never deserve to hear. The ashes went into Puget Sound, joining the water that had witnessed my rebirth. Our wedding day dawned perfect, October sunshine painting Puget Sound in shades of gold and turquoise. I woke in the bridal suite surrounded by my chosen sisters, feeling safer than I had ever felt as a child. Malin brought coffee exactly how I liked it, Sophia had my schedule printed and laminated, and Emily was already practicing her makeup looks on herself. This was what family mornings should have always been. The first security alert came during hair and makeup. Officer Chun, no relation to my therapist, but sharing the name I had chosen, texted that a car matching my parents' vehicle had taken the ferry. Jake's brother confirmed they were asking about wedding venues at the terminal coffee shop. Our information maze had failed somewhere, or perhaps they had simply started checking every possible venue within driving distance. The breach was here. I refused to let panic steal my morning. Maria helped me into my dress, while the security team updated their positions. My hand stayed steady as I put on Janet's bracelet, my something borrowed that meant more than old traditions. The photographer captured me laughing at Emily's jokes, not the way my stomach clenched with each security update. This was my day, and they had stolen enough from me already. Walking down the aisle toward Jake felt like walking into sunlight after decades in shadows. His face held every promise I needed, his tears reflecting my own joy and relief. We had made it this far despite everything. The ceremony began with readings about chosen family, found love, and building new traditions. Every word felt like armor against the past lurking outside our bubble of happiness. The moment came during our vows. I was promising to choose Jake every day when movement at the barn door caught my eye. There they stood, my ghosts made flesh. Mom wore a mother of the bride dress, the kind she never would have bought for me. Dad had his CEO stance, commanding attention he hadn't earned. Diane, pregnancy showing, clutched wrapped gifts like weapons. They had dressed for the family wedding photos they planned to take by force. Our officiant, briefed on the possibility, continued seamlessly while security moved. But Mom's voice cut through everything, wailing about missing her daughter's wedding. The gathered crowd turned, some recognizing drama when it arrived. Jake squeezed my hand, reminding me I wasn't alone this time. Officer Chen stepped forward, but I raised my hand to stop him. This needed to end with my voice, not theirs. I turned to face them fully, still holding Jake's hand, wearing the dress they never would have helped me choose. My voice carried across the barn with strength I had built from their neglect. I introduced them to our guests as the family who forgot I existed until I had something they wanted. Mom's practiced tears stopped in shock that I would name truth in public. How could you not invite your own mother? Mom's question echoed in the barn like she had rehearsed it. I responded by reciting dates and times, every forgotten birthday, every missed event, every hospital visit that went unnoticed. Our guests listened in silent support as I painted the picture of a childhood spent invisible. Dad tried to interrupt, but Jake's groomsmen stepped closer, a wall of chosen brothers protecting my moment. Robert Morrison, the man who shrugged when asked about his daughter, now demanded recognition as my father. His words about being good parents fell flat as I produced printed emails from my phone, their own words about giving my college fund to Diane, about my supposed mental illness, about their relief when I left. Sophia had suggested I keep evidence close on my wedding day, knowing narcissists hate their own words reflected back. Diane's sneer appeared right on schedule as she accused me of embarrassing our family. The possessive pronoun felt like theft from someone who had helped erase me from family photos. I reminded her of the Christmas card, the converted bedroom, the stolen heirlooms she wore even now. Her hand went unconsciously to our grandmother's necklace, the one Mom had claimed was lost. The gesture spoke louder than any confession. Jake's intervention came with perfect timing. He stepped forward, not between us but beside me, introducing himself as my husband-to-be who had spent years watching me heal from their damage. He showed them the restraining order on his phone, the legal consequence of their escalation. He spoke about the family I had found, gesturing to the Andersons who had loved me without condition, to the friends who became siblings, to the life we built on foundations of respect rather than manipulation. Janet Anderson, my true mother figure, couldn't stay silent. She walked up to Grace Morrison with the dignity of righteous anger and spoke truths that made Mom step backward. She detailed every achievement they had missed, every moment of joy they had stolen, every year of therapy I needed to believe I deserved love. She ended by saying she was grateful for their neglect because it brought me to people who could see my worth. The gifts they brought became evidence of their performance. Expensive wrapped boxes meant for show, not sentiment. Diane made one last manipulation attempt, placing her hand on her pregnant belly while asking if I would deny my future niece or nephew family. I responded that I would protect any child from the toxic dysfunction that had nearly destroyed me, that love wasn't genetic obligation but daily choice, and they had chosen to forget me until my success made remembering profitable. Security moved when Dad stepped toward me aggressively. Officer Chen and his partner flanked my parents, while Jake's groomsmen surrounded us protectively. Our wedding guests, understanding the assignment without instruction, began slow applause that built to standing ovation. They applauded my survival, my choices, my refusal to let toxicity disguise itself as family. The sound drove my family backward toward the door. Mom's final words tried to curse my happiness, predicting I would regret this day. I responded that my only regret was waiting 21 years to protect myself from people who should have protected me. Dad muttered about lawyers and consequences. Diane just stared like she was seeing me for the first time, finally visible in my refusal to disappear. They left under security escort, their performance rejected by an audience who knew better. The ceremony resumed within minutes, Phoenix rising from ashes. Our officiant offered to start over, but I wanted to continue from exactly where we left off. My vows included promises to see Jake fully, to remember every anniversary, to show up for life's moments both big and small. His vows promised to help me stay visible, to celebrate my existence daily, to build family from love rather than obligation. We kissed as husband and wife, while our chosen family cheered louder than blood ever could. The reception transformed potential trauma into triumph. The DJ played "I Will Survive" as our entrance song, making everyone laugh and cry simultaneously. Speeches from our wedding party told stories of finding family in unexpected places, of love that chooses rather than assumes. Emily's maid of honor speech about gaining the sister she always wanted brought standing ovations. Jake's brother spoke about watching me transform his family by showing them how bright love could burn when properly tended. We danced to a song about coming home, not to a place but to a person. Jake held me like I was precious and permanent, whispering that my family's appearance had only proven what we already knew. We were each other's safe harbor now. The Andersons joined us on the dance floor, surrounding us with the protective love that had helped me heal. Every guest joined eventually, creating circles of support that felt like armor against the world. The honeymoon in New Zealand felt like visiting another planet where the Morrisons had never existed. We hiked mountains that reminded me surviving emotional avalanches had prepared me for anything. Jake and I made promises under southern stars, building our own constellations of commitment. Every sunset without family drama felt like a gift, every peaceful morning a small miracle. We returned home changed, married not just to each other but to the life we were building. 6 months after the wedding, the final manipulation attempt arrived disguised as emergency. Diane sent messages through multiple channels claiming our parents were gravely ill, hospitalized, asking for their daughter. The messages included no hospital names, no medical details, just emotional manipulation designed to trigger guilt. Jake found me sobbing in our bathroom, not from sadness, but from rage that they would use potential death as a weapon. Aunt Martha, my unexpected ally, investigated and confirmed the lie. She found my parents posting vacation photos on Facebook the same day they were supposedly hospitalized. Their health remained fine, their moral bankruptcy terminal. I donated to their hometown hospital in their names, a charitable gesture that fulfilled any obligation I might have felt. The acknowledgement letter I received became proof that I could honor human suffering without accepting abuse. Therapy intensified after the wedding confrontation, processing the complex emotions of visible rejection. Dr. Chun helped me understand that their appearance had been a gift, showing our guests exactly why I had left. Their behavior validated every boundary I had set. We worked through the grief of mourning parents who never existed, the relief of ending hope for reconciliation, the freedom of closing a door I had tried to keep cracked open. 1 year after our wedding, Jake and I discovered we were expecting. The pregnancy felt like redemption, a chance to break generational patterns. We chose the name Hope before knowing the gender, understanding that hope was what had saved me. The nursery became a promise painted in soft yellows and greens, filled with books about love, chosen family, and children who matter. Every ultrasound showed a child who would never question their visibility. Hope arrived during a January snowstorm, screaming her existence into the world with no doubt she belonged. Jake cried harder than she did, whispering promises about birthday parties never forgotten. The Andersons filled our hospital room with flowers and food, celebrating their first grandchild with joy that healing could create new life. Emily declared herself the best aunt in existence, a title she would earn rather than assume. My work evolved from survival to purpose. The promotion to senior architect came with opportunities to mentor, and I focused on young women navigating tech while healing from family trauma. My office became a safe space for processing microaggressions that echoed childhood invalidation. I shared my story selectively but powerfully, showing that success wasn't about proving worth to those who should have seen it automatically. The scholarship fund grew beyond my initial donation. Other survivors contributed, creating a network of support for forgotten children aging into independence. We funded not just education but therapy, helping young people understand that being unseen wasn't their fault. The annual fundraiser became a celebration of chosen family, raising money while raising awareness about emotional neglect's invisible scars. 1 year later, our Thanksgiving table overflowed with chosen family. Malin brought her new partner. Sophia announced her pregnancy, the Andersons cooked enough food for an army of love. We went around sharing gratitude, and I spoke about the strange gift of being forgotten. It had taught me that visibility was active choice, that family was daily commitment, that love was presence rather than DNA. Hope took her first steps at that gathering, toddling between people who had chosen to see her mother when others looked away. She would grow up surrounded by aunts and uncles bound by love rather than blood, grandparents who showed up for every milestone, parents who remembered that existence itself deserved celebration. Her photo albums would overflow with pictures of a child never edited out, never forgotten, always centered in life's frame. My speaking engagements began small, sharing story at survivor support groups. The first time I said, "My name is Flora Chen, and my family forgot I existed," to a room of strangers, my voice shook. But other forgotten children nodded, recognizing themselves in my journey. We created community from shared invisibility, proving that being seen started with seeing each other. The groups grew, spreading across Seattle and beyond. 5 years after leaving, I published an essay about family estrangement that went viral. Thousands shared their own stories of being forgotten, erased, or remembered only when convenient. The messages that flooded in held pain, but also hope. Forgotten children everywhere were choosing themselves, building lives from scratch, discovering that chosen family often loved harder because they knew love's absence. The Morrisons attempted one last contact through a lawyer, demanding grandparent rights to hope. The legal response Jake's family attorney crafted was a masterpiece of boundaries. It documented their failure to parent me, their harassment of my chosen family, their lies about my mental health. It ended with a simple statement that grandparents were people who had successfully been parents first. The Morrisons had failed the prerequisite. Today, I read bedtime stories to Hope in a home filled with her artwork, every piece displayed like museum treasures. Jake documents each milestone obsessively, creating the childhood records I never had. The Andersons visit weekly, spoiling their granddaughter with presents more than presents. Emily teaches her songs about brave princesses who rescue themselves. Malin and Sophia debate who loves her more, settling on loving her differently but equally. Sometimes I wonder what the Morrisons would think of my life now. The tech leader, the speaker, the mother who remembers every detail. Then I realize the beauty is in not caring what they think. Their opinions stopped mattering the moment I chose survival over their sporadic attention. I built this life not in spite of them, but because their absence created space for abundance. Every chosen connection proved that family was about showing up, not showing DNA. My story ends not with revenge, but with life fully lived. Every morning, Hope calls for Mama with certainty she will be heard. Jake kisses us both goodbye, promising to hurry home because missing evening stories is unthinkable. I work at a job that values my contributions, surrounded by chosen siblings who celebrate my victories and support my struggles. This is what it means to be remembered, not grand gestures, but daily presence. The woman who once slept in her car now owns a home where forgotten children gather for holiday meals. The girl erased from family photos now has walls covered in images of chosen family. The daughter who asked, "Why don't you see me?" now helps others become visible. Sometimes the family that forgets you makes room for the family that treasures every moment of your existence. That space between forgotten and found is where I built my life. To everyone who has felt invisible in their own family, who has been forgotten by those meant to remember, who has been told their pain is dramatic or attention-seeking, know this: your visibility isn't determined by their blindness. You deserve to be seen, celebrated, and centered in your own life. The family that forgets you might be giving you the greatest gift, the chance to be chosen by people who understand that love is a verb, not an obligation. Thank you for sharing my story today. If you've ever felt forgotten by family, I'd love to hear how you found your chosen people in the comments below. Please like this video if it resonated with you, subscribe to hear more stories of survival and triumph, and share this with someone who needs to know they're not alone in being unseen. Remember, being forgotten by the wrong people often means being found by the right ones. Until next time, this is Flora, choosing visibility every single day.